Hello and welcome to another DCS video. In this one I'm looking at the KA-50 and what's needed to take off, fly and control and land the aircraft. I'm also going to look at the differences between the rotary and the fixed wing, flying characteristics and instrumentation, and I won't be looking at the weapons deployment or armament, and I'm concentrating on some basic techniques. The prerequisites that you're going to need in order to be able to fly are a joystick, a separate throttle, pedals and track IR. Now other people may disagree and say that you can fly without these. I will argue the point that the KA-50 is the most complex flight sim in the DCS series in my estimation, and it's going to be difficult enough to master it already having those prerequisites. You're also going to need to have some keys mapped. Although the pit contains a fully functional controls using the mouse, there are some controls on the stick and on the collective that need to be accessed either through a keyboard or through some kind of a HOTAS. They can't be adjusted using the mouse. So the ones that we need for the basic flight and handling that we're going to be doing here are the following. You need to be able to adjust the throttle using right control page down and page up. You need to be able to trim the aircraft using the T key. You need to be able to reset the trim using left control and T. You need to be able to switch off the wheel brakes using W, and you need to display the Axis mini HUD using right control and enter. And I'm going to switch on the mini HUD now, and we can see it there on the left hand side. Now going to switch on our lights. Our engine is already running, so we don't have to worry about that. Now we're in idling, where the engine is idling, and now we're going to have a quick thumb through the gauges on the left hand side. So the gauges there, you can see we have the HSI, or equivalent to the HSI there, which is a kind of a God's eye view. We have the ADI, and below that we have the slip indicator to tell us that we're flying in a coordinated way. Above that we've got the vertical velocity indicator, G meter to the left. Below that the airspeed indicator, to the left of that radar altimeter. Below those we have the barometric altimeter, and to the left of that we have the engine speedometer or rev gauge in percentage. And finally we have the blade angle indicator in degrees. So we can see in the center we've got our cyclic, which I'll call our stick, and the cyclic works in a very similar way to the way the stick works in a fixed wing aircraft. By moving it left and right we adjust the roll, and by moving it forward or aft we adjust the pitch. And let's have a quick look outside and see how that's done by looking at our rotors. I'll just put those rotors against the horizon on the background, and I'm going to push the stick forward, pitch it forward, and we can see it tilts the rotor blades forward, and by pulling it back it tilts them back. Similarly we want to do it left and right. By rolling to the left you can see blades are tilted to the left, and rolling to the right they're tilted to the right. So this changes the net force vector on the aircraft and drives it in the direction that the rotor blades are tilted. Go back in now and let's have a look at our stick on the left hand side, which is what we call the collective. And the collective adjusts the propeller pitch, and we can see it's connected to our gauge that we just looked at a moment ago. So as I have it down in 0, we have very little pitch on the propellers, but as I raise it up we can see that the propeller blades, the rotor blades are pitched upwards to that level, and this will have an impact on the engine revs. As you can see, our engine revs are driving down because it imposes some resistance and it's trying to lift the aircraft up. Also on the collective is our throttle, and the throttle has got its two separate throttles for engine, for two engines, and there's four positions for this, and it's fundamentally different from the throttle on a fixed wing aircraft, which is got a continuous power rating from, well, normally from idle up to 100%. In this case, in a rotary aircraft, we've only got four positions for the car, and the positions are idle, low, or idle, medium, auto, and full. I'll push them back down to idle. The position we'll use most of the time is the auto position, and this ensures that we have the nominal power setting for the engine. And it's important to have the power setting for the engine to ensure that we have power when we apply pitch to the rotor blade. And let's look at the rev gauge here. We can see there's two red marks on the top there, and these red marks are an indication of where our revs should be while we're in flight or while we're managing or moving the aircraft, and if they're not, we could be in danger of damaging the engines. So what we do to lift off the aircraft is we switch the throttle into its auto position, and we can see our engine switches up to nominal power, and it's at that point now we can apply pitch to the blades in order to lift the aircraft off the ground. If we go outside, we'll have a look at what's happening when we do this. So I'm going to apply some pitch to the blades. Let's see what happens. The rotor, you can see there's power being applied and there's lift generated as indicated by the deflection upwards of the rotor blades. Now if I lift it enough, we'll take some weight off the wheels, and we can see the net force is tilting our aircraft backwards. Now I have the wheel brakes on and I'm going to take them off and going to apply a bit of force, and we can see what happens is the aircraft rolls back, and this is in the neutral trim position. So we can see how the rotor blades generate the lift, and in this case, because the neutral position has a net force which is to the rear of the centre of gravity, the aircraft moves back. So we move this force forward of the centre of gravity by pitching forward, or to the right or left of it by rolling to the left or right, as I just displayed a moment ago. So let's go back inside now, and we're going to have a look at our mini hood. On the mini hood, we're going to first of all switch ourselves back into idle, and the mini hood here shows the position of all our control surfaces, and it's really important that this is switched on at all times during flight. It kind of compensates for the fact that we're in a virtual cockpit, because a real pilot would have different visual cues to know where the control surfaces were. So you can see our pitch control is in the center. We have our throttle, or our pedals control at the bottom. We have our collective control on the left, and we even have our throttle control. You can see the separate positions for the throttle. So we've got everything we need there to know where we are, and I'm going to explain now the way we trim the aircraft. And again, it's a fundamental difference between fixed wing and rotary wing in the way the trim is managed. For the fixed wing aircraft, Trim is managed with 3 separate axes which we can trim independently. They are pitch, roll and yaw. For the rotary aircraft, it's a single pitch button, and what we do is we move the stick and the pedals to the position that we want to trim at, and we click the trim button, and then we return the pedals and the stick to the center position. And what the aircraft does, it remembers the position that those control surfaces were at when we clicked on the pitch button. Gives us a small amount of time to get the stick and the control back to the center position, and then it sets the trim at that position. So if I demonstrate this by moving the rudder pedals and the stick and click on the trim button, and now I'm going to let my controls here, my physical controls here, go back to neutral, and we can see how the trimming is affected there. We're trimmed to the left. If we want to trim reset, we click on the reset button and everything goes back to center. So the fact that our aircraft is likely to go backwards if we try to lift off means that when we wish to drive the aircraft forward or take off, we should be trimming slightly forward. I'm going to show you how to taxi now using the stick. Once again, taxiing in rotary wing is different from that in a fixed wing, in that normally for a fixed wing we'll use nose wheel steering by using our rudder pedals. Here we're going to just use the cyclic or our stick, and we're going to change the force on the aircraft using the rotor blades in order to affect movement of the aircraft. So I'm going to apply our throttle to the auto position, and now I'm also going to apply a couple of degrees of pitch to our rotor blades in order to take some weight off the wheels, and then I'm going to push the stick forward, and we can see that the aircraft starts moving forward. So if we watch our mini HUD there, you can see what I'm doing. If I wanted to turn to the left here, I can pull the stick to the left. These are gentle movements because you can overturn the helicopter very easily. If you move them aggressively, I'm going to pull back to the right. So this is how we taxi, and I'm going to center it once again, and by pulling back I can stop. I can also apply wheel brakes if I need to. So that's how we can taxi, and you notice that I didn't use rudder pedals at any stage during that process. Last thing we're going to look at before we take off is our flight control system, and we can see the flight control panel here is on the right hand side, and we've got 4 important buttons here: bank hold, pitch, heading and altitude hold. It's essential that the pitch and bank hold are on all the time, and you'll find flight almost impossible without them because there'll be uncontrolled oscillations of those axes on the aircraft. So there's separate control channels for each of those, and we're only going to use the bank and the pitch for this demonstration. The others are used, you can either use them manually or they're used in hover mode, which we're not covering in this. So we're ready to take off now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pitch the aircraft about 20% forward, we can see on our left here, and I'm going to trim it. So now I've released my my stick into neutral position, and I'm going to bring my collective up to 50% and start pushing the stick a little bit forward, and you can see I'm adjusting it to maintain us straight on the runway. And now I'm going to increase my collective up to about 80%, and we start to become airborne. I'm using the rudder in order to maintain straight and level flight here, a combination of the stick and rudder. And I'm going to put our wheels up now, and I've pitched down slightly, probably 5 degrees nose down, and I've trimmed the aircraft to that. So now I'm going to attempt to get coordinated flight here, and we look at our slip indicator there to make sure it's centered, to make sure that we're flying in the most efficient manner. We're going to do a pattern. We're currently heading out at 090. We're going to turn around to 270, and then we're going to do a pattern and land the way we started off. So we can see we're not quite controlled in our flight, and I'm going to adjust that by adjusting my pedals and retrimming, and then I have to compensate by adjusting the stick again, and that looks a bit better. So you can see the trimming of the aircraft, it's much different than it is with a fixed wing aircraft, and I'll be trimming all the time in order to get level and coordinated flying. I'm going to do a turn here, and the way I do this is I'm drop the nose slightly, roll the aircraft into the turn, and adjust the pedals as necessary to keep the ball centered. And we're turning onto a heading of 270. So we're going to be travelling parallel to the runway. So you can see the turn is similar to the way it would be done on a fixed wing aircraft, maintaining the slip indicator in the center. We're at 250 now, so we're going to roll out at 270. There we are, 270, and we're going to roll out now, and we're going to start trimming the aircraft again. So trim it and release. Okay, so we look like we're reasonably well trimmed there. I'm going to drop the nose a bit to increase our speed ever so slightly. There we go. I have to be careful with the speed because we can overspeed the aircraft, although we do get an indication very quickly if we're going too fast. So let's look at our indicator. We can see our engine revs are between the two red needles, which is perfect for us. It will drift up or down depending on what torque you're applying to the rotor blades, but it should be within those two limits. So now passing the end of the runway, we'll go on a little bit further, and then we're going to do a right turn to bring us on to finals. Okay, that looks good enough. We're also going to pull back on our collective. You can see we're pulling back to about 50% in order to reduce the power and decrease our altitude. We're rolling into the next turn, and you see our slip indicator is good. Keep a constant eye that we're turning quickly enough so that we can line up with the runway. And we can see we're descending ever so slightly in altitude, and we're going to start pulling back on our power because we need to slow down. And one of the things you'll notice is that the aircraft becomes more difficult to control as the speed comes down. So when we get over the runway and we slow down, I've gone a little bit too far here, so I'm going to pull sharper into that turn. Okay. As we slow down, we'll see it's more difficult to manage. So now what I've got to do is I've got to get it controlled and start bringing down the speed by pitching up. And I'll trim the aircraft now. A little off center for the runway. When we're straight, we're adjust the heading. Okay, we're at 137 now. We need to put our wheels down. We need to touch down at less than 35, so we don't want to damage our gear. Okay, we're going to touch down now, and immediately our collective back to 0. So remember, we can control the aircraft now with our stick if we want to continue to taxi, or we can stop and hover and move to our parking position. So I'm going to pull back on the stick, stop the aircraft and apply brakes. Okay, so that's a quick demonstration of some of the most important features needed to be able to take off, do a controlled flight and land, and essentially control the CAF 50. I hope you found this useful, and feel free to comments, and thank you for watching.